Hi, it's DeeBee Daws, and I'm living welderly with positivity. Today, I'm going to talk about kindness. In fact, I've entitled it Precious Kindness. The Bible is filled with verses about joy and happiness. God wants us to be happy in this life, and He has given us many commandments and instructions on how to find lasting joy and happiness. Happiness is not a destination that we reach once we have accomplished all of our goals. Rather, it is a state of mind that we can achieve by following God's commandments and living our lives according to His laws. When we focus on pleasing Him rather than ourselves, we find true joy and happiness in spite of the trials and tribulations we may face. Life has always been a mosaic of joys and sorrows, of triumphs and failures, of moments that lift us high and those that bring us low. In this grand tapestry, it's tempting to measure our lives by the yardstick of personal happiness, as if our own joy were the sole purpose of existence. Yet, there is a deeper truth that whispers to us in the quiet moments of reflection. The beauty of life does not depend on how happy you are, but how happy others can be because of you. To understand this, we must first acknowledge the fleeting nature of personal happiness. Happiness, as we often define it, is a transient state, a momentary burst of pleasure or contentment that can be as elusive as it is desired. We chase it in our achievements, in our relationships, in the acquisition of wealth or status, but like a mirage in the desert, it often fades, just as we think we have it in our grasp. The more we chase happiness for its own sake, the more it seems to slip away, leaving us feeling hollow and unfulfilled. But when we shift our focus from seeking happiness to creating it for others, something remarkable happens. We begin to find meaning in the small acts of kindness, in the ways we can lift others up, in the joy we can spark in another's heart. This shift is not just a noble pursuit, it's a practical one too. Research in psychology tells us that people who engage in acts of kindness and altruism often experience greater levels of well-being and life satisfaction. It seems that the very act of making others happy brings happiness to ourselves, but in a way that is deeper and more enduring than the fleeting pleasures we so often pursue. A man was driving his car when he saw an old lady stranded on the side of the road. He saw that she needed help, so he stopped his Pontiac near her Mercedes and got out. He smiled while he was approaching her. Still, she was worried as nobody had stopped for hours. Moreover, he did not look safe. His appearance was poor and shabby. He could see how frightened she was, so he tried to calm her. "I'm here to help you. Don't worry. My name is Brian Anderson." The tire was flat, so he had to crawl under the car. While changing the tire, he got dirty and he hurt his hand. When the job was done, she asked how much she owed him for his help. Brian smiled. He said, "If you really want to pay me back, the next time you see someone who needs help, give that person the needed assistance and think of me." At the same evening, the lady stopped by a small cafe. The place looked dingy. Then she saw a waitress, clearly very pregnant, wiping her wet hair with a towel. The waitress had a sweet, friendly smile, although she had spent the whole day on her feet. The lady wondered how someone who has so little can be so kind and giving to a stranger. Then she remembered Brian. The lady had finished her meal and paid with a $100 bill. The waitress went to get change, and when she came back, the lady was gone. She left a note on the napkin. "You don't owe me anything. Somebody once helped me just like I'm now helping you. If you really want to pay me back, don't let this chain of love end with you." The waitress found 4 more $100 bills under the napkin. That night, the waitress came home. She was thinking about the lady and the money that she had left, and she wondered how the lady could know how much she and her husband needed it, especially now with the baby coming. She knew that her husband worried about all that, and so she was glad to tell him the good news. Then she kissed him and whispered, "Now everything will be all right. I love you, Brian Anderson." What will we leave behind when we are gone? Material possessions, achievements, accolades, they all may fade with time, but happiness we create in others has that ripple effect that can last for generations. A kind word, a generous deed, a moment of understanding, these are the things that people remember, the things that linger in the hearts and minds of those we leave behind. When we live in a way that seeks to create happiness in others, we are contributing to a legacy of goodness that can transcend time. Moreover, the beauty of life seen through this lens is inherently communal. It reminds us that we are not isolated beings, but part of a larger tapestry of human experience. Our lives are intertwined with those of others, and our actions have the power to influence the world around us. When we strive to make others happy, we are contributing to the collective well-being of our communities, our families, and our world. This sense of interconnectedness is what gives life its richness, its depth, its beauty. It's also worth noting that this way of living requires a certain humility. It asks us to put aside our ego, to recognize that our own happiness is not the center of the universe, but just one part of a larger picture. It calls us to be selfless in our actions, to find joy in the success and happiness of others, even when it means stepping back and letting someone else shine. This humility is not a sign of weakness, but of strength, for it takes great courage to live a life dedicated to the happiness of others. In the end, the beauty of life lies in the connections we build, the love we share, the joy we spread. It's found not in the pursuit of our own happiness, but in the happiness we create for others. This is a beauty that does not fade with time, but grows richer with each passing day. It's a beauty that lives on in the hearts of those we touch, a legacy of love and kindness that can outlast even the most fleeting moments of personal happiness. So, as we walk through this life, let's strive to be a source of happiness for others. Let's find joy in the smiles we inspire, the hearts we lift, the lives we touch. For in doing so, we will discover that the true beauty of life is not in how happy we are, but in how happy others can be because of us. And in that discovery, we may find that our own lives are more beautiful and more meaningful and more fulfilling than we ever imagined. I have a story today about a young woman. I met her for the first time about 29 years ago. I won't go into a lot of detail about that, but I thought her to be one of the prettiest young women I saw that day at this particular event. She wore a beautiful lacy white dress, had long, dark, natural curly hair, and she was no bigger than a minute. She smiled the biggest smile I'd ever seen, and she had a tinkling sort of laugh that made those around her smile. We had an interesting conversation, and I came away a little happier that day because of that exchange. About a year later, that young woman became my daughter-in-law when she married my eldest son. Roseanne verbalized two goals to me at our first meeting. She'd already achieved one in having served a mission for her church, and she was going to school to be a cosmetologist. Throughout the next 27 years, Roseanne was a driving force in our family get-togethers, and I was always impressed at her lack of guile and the joy she brought to every family function. She and my son were not able to have children, but they built a family through the beauty of adoption, and they raised two lovely girls. They had wanted a big family, and in that spirit, made themselves available as foster parents. They had many children in and out of their home, wherein they gave parental direction as well as showing by example what being in a family looked like. Roseanne was a strong advocate to these children and a loving mother figure, as well as being very involved in her own role as a mother. She was also devoted to her many nieces and nephews on both sides of the family. She was our Rosie, and we all loved her. A year and a half ago, she was killed in a horrific accident at her workplace. The night before the accident, she had hosted a family party for her brothers and sisters and their families at her home. That morning, she walked out the door to go to her job, and by noon, she was gone forever from mortality. Of course, we were all devastated. Throughout the next few days, I realized her loving nature had touched many more people than our family. There were at least 1,000 people at her funeral. We received phone calls, notes, personal visits from those whose lives Roseanne touched in a variety of ways. It was amazing to me to hear about our Rosie and how she spread herself around. She would take her cosmetology equipment to old folks' homes and do hair for the residents. She loved helping the ladies look pretty and the gentlemen look tidy. She had several people where she would simply go and sit with them because they were lonely and needed company. She made herself available at Christmas time when she would load up her car and deliver packages to those less fortunate. I tagged along once, and she was so happy to be doing this service. People described how comforting were the hugs she shared while whispering words of encouragement, and I wasn't at all surprised when people mentioned how much they loved her smile. They described it as infectious. She was patient to a fault. One of the things the family now has on display at their home is an album overflowing with note cards gathered from people who loved our Rosie. Each card describes some way that Roseanne touched their lives. Often it was no more than a small act of kindness that made a positive difference to them at a time when their life was filled with stress. Roseanne never created a foundation, though one has now been created in her name and will provide scholarships for young people wanting an education as a cosmetologist. She was never big on being a public speaker, though public speakers have uttered her name as an example of someone who made a big difference with little acts of kindness. She never had a lot of money to donate to those who had less than she, though large sums of money were donated to her girls to help them fulfill their dreams. Her elder daughter had only gotten married a month prior to the loss of her mother, and the younger girl had graduated high school a few months prior. It has been a difficult transition for her husband of 27 years, her daughters, her mother, sisters, and brother, and for all of us who had the privilege to call her one of our own for almost 3 decades. The point is, Roseanne made a difference with little random acts of kindness, and I'd like to challenge all of us to aim for that kind of life. Holding open a door, saying thank you, smiling at a stranger, asking someone how they are doing, and then listening, donating our time or our means, making sure we let our loved ones know that we love them, looking people in the eye and telling them you care. To wrap things up, remember this: luck's a revolving door. You just need to know when it's your turn to walk through. You can thank Stan Lee for that one. Thanks for listening. I'm DeeBee Daws, and I'm living welderly with positivity. Hope you're subscribing, and please give me a like. It's what makes my channel grow. Take care, everybody.